Welcome to Quit to Win, the show where we explore the moments people had to let go of destructive pattern, limiting identity, and the internal battle to build their life with purpose and clarity of how it be a COP certified global brand agency with studio in London and Los Angeles. The former award-winning journalist, design critic, Central Scene Maltese graduate, the and AD 2026 jury president, UN Women Ambassador, and one of the 100 most influential creative leaders in the world. Cat launch How in 2020s after cycling that made staying in the old path impossible happen on the train. Cat,
Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm Kat Howe.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, Kat, tell us about the moment on the train and what happened and what did it make undeniable?
Yeah, well, thanks, Ben. Yeah, so basically, before I set up my company that I'm running at the moment, my husband and I had an e-commerce business called How Kapow, based after our second name. And we were running that e-commerce business for about 7 years. 7 years. And we were on a train coming back from a conference in Paris. And it was at that moment on a train when we decided that we just had to quit what we were doing in retail and e-com and just start something else. We had lots of warehouses full of lots of stock and lots of products, but we realized that we didn't want to do that anymore and that now was the time to quit and to start something new, sell down all the stock and then start a new business that was just about ideas.
Yeah, amazing.
Which is where our branding agency came from. Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's lovely. Of all places, that happened in the train, and that really got to me. So you were a journalist and design critic before you became a designer and founder. What did spending years writing about other people's creative work do to your relationship with your own?
Yeah, great question. I feel like I was paid from very early on to have an opinion about creativity and to have an opinion about what I liked, what I didn't like. And so writing as a design critic and theatre critic and art critic was really important in terms of helping me just know if I liked something or know if I didn't, which really helps in what I do now as a creative director. That's what you're basically paid to do. You're paid to have an opinion. You're paid to know what you think looks good and what you feel doesn't look good. So that helped me to articulate that. And it also helped me to be able to articulate that in words and write about the things that I liked and the things I didn't like, which now obviously in what I do is just as important. It's just now I'm actually helping to create the imagery myself with my team. And I'm not the one criticizing other people's work. I'm doing my own work and that's way better.
Yeah, amazing. I think it's really lovely being that, at the point where creative critic other people's work, and now you having to be on that particular list week to get to be creative in it. Yeah, a whole lot of different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you launched How in 2020.
That's right.
Into a pandemic. What did that timing demand of you that a normal launch never would have?
Yeah. So they always say that there's never a good time to do anything. And so some would say that launching in the middle of the pandemic is probably not the best time, which I probably agree with. But we had 2 kids at home, 2 kids under the age of 5 at home, and we were working from our garage. So it really wasn't the best time. But in other ways, it opened us up to a global possibility of work and of talent. So it meant that suddenly, without even realizing it, we could have access to freelance designers all over the world. And it didn't really matter if someone was in London or if someone was in New York or if someone was in Portugal or if someone was in Greece. As long as the time zone was right, then we could hire talent. And it didn't matter for that amazing first year, I think, of the pandemic, because everyone was working from home and everyone was remote. We could pick whoever we wanted, and it was quite glorious. And we didn't realize how different that time was to how it was conventionally, where normally you'd have a studio and then people would move to the city where the studio is. So we have a studio in London, for example, and you'd move to the studio, then you'd go to the studio 5 days a week, then you'd come back. But opening the company in the pandemic meant we didn't have any of that. We didn't have to pay any overheads at the time. But of course, then it made it more complicated in the end, in the sense that when the pandemic restrictions lifted, people wanted to be next to each other. People wanted to have their team together. And so then we had to engineer having people in the same place again. Even though sometimes people would work from home, we realized that actually then having people in the same place and same city was also actually still important. So although it gave us a lot of freedom at the beginning, it then did mean that it was a bit more complicated down the line to recalibrate things.
Especially it really got when you make reference of, there is no special time, there's a best time. You just have to get started anyway.
Exactly. You just have to go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, reason. So you publish your salary bound opening out. Most agency would never do that. What made you to decide to pay transparency and non-negotiable, and what has it cost you giving you?
Yeah, great question. So I think it's very rare in the creative industries and certainly with agencies for people to publish their pay brackets. And if you set up your own business, it's difficult, but it also means you can make your own rules. And I think for us, my husband and I, when we set up the business, we knew we wanted it to be a new, different sort of agency. We wanted to set a standard. We wanted to see best practice. We publish our salary tiers because we want people to know in the team that they're not getting paid less than someone else because of their gender, essentially. So this is to mitigate the gender pay gap. It means that everyone feels and knows that they're on the same page. It means that they know how much their co-workers are earning and it's the same as them. And it's all based on experience. And then you have different tier brackets that you can move up to. There's also opportunities for people to earn bonuses if they've been doing great work as well. And so we did this because we realized there's a really big problem with women being underpaid for the work that they do compared to their male colleagues who are doing the same job as them. So this was our way to try and change the system ourselves from the ground up and to have some sort of control over that ourselves in our own business. But in terms of what we've lost, well, we lose a lot to our competitors. I'm sure people know how much we pay and they pay more. And so therefore, I'm sure we've probably lost some talent that way. But that's a risk I'm willing to take just because I feel like it's still a position that's worth having and worth sticking and fighting for.
Yeah, it's really amazing, and the fact that the equality between the ladies and having to publish it out so and giving such kind of secret information. Yeah, a whole lot, something to gain and something to learn and making it more transparency. I think that really clear balance for every talent that are coming into them, rather than then having to come into them and getting to realize later on that actually might reduce the way they put in themselves in there compared to having to know upfront and know what's the demand to actually come in. Yeah, it's really lovely. So you have built 3 businesses. What did the failure teach you that the win could never?
Well, the first business was this business that I set up with my husband, the e-commerce, and that one we ended up selling that to a competitor. So it didn't fail necessarily, but we just probably did it for a bit too long. And then the second business was a co-working business that we then set up in the studios and the warehouses where we'd had the stock for the first business. And again, that wasn't really quite right. And I think those two then led us to then realize what we needed to do for this one, which feels like the right one now. And feels like the stars have aligned. The first business, we learned the hard way. We learned about profit and loss. We learned about margins and dealing with suppliers and things that go wrong and things that go right. And I feel like it taught us a lot that we didn't realize we were learning at the time. And the same with the second business too. It helped us actually to move to a different country. We moved from England to Portugal at that time. And then it taught us that we didn't want to actually work with anything physical for a very long time. And so that then, all those learnings then fed into what we're doing now. And it feels like we've had to learn the hard way, but now that we've worked it out, now we're working on this one and there's still lots of problems to resolve, but at least we're in the right space.
Yeah, amazing. It's really lovely. Owing to the first business, you have to learn from it that profit and loss there. Owing to the experiential aspect of it, because sometimes some indices in business is not learned out just by more like our studying and everything. There's an experience. There's an experience that comes with it that make it more than it is owing to the fact that you have now have skin in the game compared to when you're just out there and analyzing business without having overshare of it. Yeah, it's really amazing.
100%.
So you say brave is a strategy, not a personality trait. What does that mean in practice? And what does a brand have to quit doing before brazenly becomes possible?
Well, I think a brand, so we work with brands all the time. We work with companies, Series B scale up Series B to enterprise companies. And we do a lot of branding every day. In fact, that's what we do. We rebrand or we do refreshes or we do campaigns. And I think what quite a lot of people think that branding is a logo and a color palette and some type. But really, what it really is a successful brand is something that creates a feeling in someone that they never had before. And a successful brand is something that is memorable and that people remember and tell their friends about. And so I think people think that it's all about the visual and how it looks, but it's actually also how it speaks. It's how it makes you feel, and it's what sort of place it has in the world and what sort of things it's saying culturally and purposefully as well.
Yeah, I mean, creating brand, yes, it's more like creating a feeling that they never had. Yeah, it's really amazing. Such a lovely definition. We just speak volumes to the visual representation of what the business entails, and it's speaking beyond just the logo, making them more like knowing what the feelings that's attached to more like when they actually more like engage with the particular business. Yeah, amazing.
Exactly. Yeah,
So
yeah.
most people think branding is all about logo. What is it actually about? And what does getting that wrong cost a business?
Oh, well, yeah. So I've touched on it a little bit in the first question, but I think getting it wrong means that if you don't invest in brand at the very beginning, particularly if you're a founder and you're just about to start your business, I think quite often people starting their businesses from the beginning always assume that brand is something you do later, and brand is something that you've got lots of other stuff to worry about. Why would you worry about brand at this time? But actually investing in brand at the very beginning means that you set up your story, your brand story, that everything is hinged around, and that can actually save you a lot of money in the long run. It means you don't have to rebrand later. It means you don't have to worry about changing things and changing the perception of your brand when you are having success. So I think one of the things, people perhaps don't realize is that it should be one of the first investments you make. And I'm not just saying that as a brand person. It's basically because doing that early means you will save yourself more money and more time in the long run. Also, a good name makes a massive difference. People think they'll just sort out a name later. They have to sort out other things, and that's not important. But you're getting your story and your personality of your brand right before you start to market it and work into all the product features and whatever you're selling is the most important thing. People have to understand what you actually do first and what feeling you want to create in them.
Yeah. This is really amazing. And the new thing when you just start making reference of it, that it should be the first investment. It just dawned on me that, almost every business, either they have branding or they don't have, is telling the stories. And if you
Yes.
didn't create the narrative of what you want them to perceive, it will be telling them the different, it might be telling them the opposite or something different. And having to navigate it the first time will be biggest advantage compared to allowing it telling stories that doesn't resonate with what you actually want to portray. Yeah, it's really amazing. So also you speak everywhere, from Davos to Web Summits. What is one idea you keep coming back to as a sage, no matter the audience, and the things that never stop being necessary to say?
Well, I always come back to some fundamentals about how creativity should just always be seen as intention. I think there's a lot of talk at the moment about AI and about how
Yeah,
how will it affect creativity and how will it affect the design process and what people, do. AI can make a brand in 5 seconds. So, but I always come back to the idea that creativity was never about the tool. It was always about the intent and the fact that, a long time ago, people used to paint with paintbrushes. Well, people still do, but still. And then painting it was overtaken by photography, and then photography was overtaken by pixels, and people started doing stuff in Photoshop. And now you can say you can paint with prompts. I think it's the idea that creativity has never died. It's never gone away, but it's just changing and it's shedding its skin. And that's something I always come back to as an optimistic vision of the future, really, when it comes to creativity. Yeah, in my
yeah.
talks.
Creativity is never die. It just share the skin and have a different version of it. And I think this is really lovely. In the moment you just start making reference of it from about painting to pixel, from that to photography and the whole lot of things, it just creates a lovely background, which speak volumes. So earlier on when it gets started from painting, it was more demanding compared to when it comes to pixel and that to photography. That is how the difficulties keep transferring from one end to the other. And it just shows that AI has come in to make it easier, but that too does not kind of eliminate the creativity that is coming to them. It's just another different way of doing the same thing. And it's
Yeah.
really amazing. You walk away from the safe career part, the
Yeah.
journalism world, the critic chair. For
Yeah.
someone who knows their real work is somewhere else, but is afraid that it's too late,
Yeah.
what do
Yeah.
you want
That's great.
to hear?
Yeah, I agree. So I think, this is why I love the title of your podcast too, and the name of the name of Quit to Win is such an is a great
Yeah.
way of framing that people shouldn't be afraid to just say, let's try something different. So I think there's multiple times in people's lives where you feel like you could do something and perhaps you don't. I'm quite lucky. I run my businesses with my husband, and we're very good at just suddenly saying, right, let's just do something different. Let's just do it. And we have each other. Very difficult when you don't have that other person. And before I started businesses with my husband, Roger, I was a bit like, I did the journalism, I did this. I always knew that I wanted to do something else. I always had a vision in my mind. That vision changed, and I had another vision, and I had another dream, and I had another goal 5 years later. So I think what I'd say is that, you should never be scared to just make the call on changing your life if you feel like it's not quite right, because the worst thing to do is to stay in doing something mediocre and something that you're not happy doing. Of course, it's not easy, and it's more effort when you have to change things and you have to do something new and you have to query and question yourself as to whether that's a good decision. But the worst thing to do is to not do anything at all, because change is the only constant in life. And I think quit to win is actually great. Sometimes quitting is not seen as a negative thing and shouldn't be seen as a negative thing. It should be seen as a really positive thing, where you realize that in order to pivot, in order to do something better with your life, you just have to call it a day and know when you have to call it a day. Knowing when you have to call it a day is actually also really crucial too. But sometimes, sometimes it's just, as long as you have something that you can then drive yourself towards afterwards. I think quitting for the sake of quitting sometimes with no plan of action afterwards can sometimes be a bit problematic. So
Yeah.
it very much depends on whether you've got something that you think you could do. Even if that idea changes later down the line, it doesn't matter. Quit and then start something new. Just don't quit just to quit.
Yeah, amazing. This is really lovely. Mean that, don't be afraid to make that call. Yeah, of your life that is going to change your whole of outcome. Yeah, quitting is good. Knowing what to quit and knowing when to actually do that, it's really key. So, lastly, for founders who want to build a brand that actually shape the culture, not just sell product, what is the first brave move?
So, first brave move. Well, what they should do is they should always look at differentiating. So, if you want to build a brand that's like no one else, then the first thing you should do is look at your category. So, say you're a B2B SaaS company or a healthcare or a sustainable fashion brand, let's say. The last thing you should do is look at your competitors and say, I want to be like them. The first thing you should do is look at your competitors and say, I want to do something completely different to what these guys are doing. I want to differentiate. I want to make myself look like no one else in this category, because that's how I'm going to make people remember me. And the first thing you do before that is then say, or the next thing you do before that, is then to say, well, what is the feeling that I want to get from my customers? What if I'm selling clothes as a fashion brand? Do I want my customers to feel happy that they're buying something cheap? Do I want them to feel smug that they're buying something expensive? What sort of feeling are you wanting to get in people? And then go searching for that feeling anywhere else you can, in whatever category you can. So this could be, if you want people to, we did a brand recently for an e-commerce business, and they wanted people to feel like they were pioneering this new, you can set up your shop. It was a company called Big Cartel. You can set up your own online shop with Big Cartel. It's a bit like Shopify, and you can, add products to it, and you can have your own shop within them. And they wanted the people using their platform to feel like really empowered and pioneering, as if they were like pioneers and they were like exploring new territories. And so we didn't look at other e-coms for inspiration, because no one wants to look like Shopify. If you're competing against Shopify, that would be stupid. So we actually looked at other brands outside of that space, North Face, Patagonia, brands which had a pioneering spirit about them, which we could then pull into the feeling that we wanted into the e-com brand. And when you have that, then you create something that just isn't ever seen, and it's completely different. And I think that is, if you want to be category defining, that is what you have to do. And that's what we advise all founders that come to us on.
Yeah, amazing. This is really lovely. Just speak volume. So once you already know the kind of brand you want to portray, sit it down to do a whole lot of analysis and pull things in perspective. It's really key going to the fact that, at the end of the day, brand is more like a physical representation of what a particular company actually represents. And if it's be done right, it ought to carry all the emotions and everything that's, the company portray. And this is really amazing. Thank you so much. So from all things,
Thank you so much, Ben, for having me. I really appreciate all the questions, and, very, very well researched as well. So I appreciate the call.
So from all things, we would love to connect with you, either for coaching for in respect of branding, or to kind of consume some of your material as well. How can they reach out, and where's the best platform?
For me, my website, obviously, w.how.studio is my agency website. You can also find me, Kat How, on LinkedIn, so please connect. And I have a very small YouTube channel that I'm just about to start, again, Kat How, and my agency has an Instagram account, how_studio. So go find us on there.
Kaka, thank you for your reminder that brave is a strategy, and that the real work is always worth the wait, and is one this audience needed. And from all this, we'll love to reach out. Check the show notes. You see the link to how to reach out to her. And remember that the big Think bigger, act braver, shape culture for the better. There is a tagline. It is a decision.
Exactly.
Once again, it's a pleasure.
100%.
Having
Yeah,
the show.
likewise. Thank you so much for the call.